The alien queen stood atop the obsidian dais, her iridescent exoskeleton shimmering with an otherworldly glow that illuminated the vast war chamber. Around her, holographic projections of battlefields flickered and danced, displaying the grim reality of a war that had stretched across galaxies and centuries. The once mighty Zorathian Empire, known for its unparalleled technological advancements and strategic brilliance, now teetered on the brink of collapse. Her generals, their chitinous armor bearing the scars of countless battles, shifted uneasily in their positions, their multifaceted eyes reflecting both fear and determination. The enemy, the Vorlak Horde, had proven to be an adversary unlike any they had encountered before. Their organic metallic ships could adapt to any weapon frequency within seconds. Their warriors possessed regenerative abilities that made them nearly impossible to kill, and their hive-mind coordination rendered traditional military strategies ineffective. What began as a border skirmish had evolved into a full-scale invasion that threatened to consume everything the Zorathians held dear. For 3 cycles of their home planet's orbit, the Queen had led her people through increasingly desperate battles. The Grand Armada that once dominated star systems now lay scattered and diminished. Key outposts had fallen, resource planets were lost, and entire colonies had been wiped out. The council chambers, once filled with debates about expansion and cultural exchange, now echoed with emergency sessions and casualty reports. Even the ancient defense networks, relics of a bygone era when the Zorathians had faced extinction-level threats, had been overwhelmed by the Vorlak's relentless advance. Yet what troubled the Queen most wasn't the military setbacks or the mounting losses. It was the growing sense of despair spreading through her ranks like a contagion. The Zorathians, renowned throughout the galaxy for their indomitable spirit and innovative thinking, were beginning to doubt their ability to prevail. Scientists who once pushed the boundaries of quantum physics now struggled to find solutions against an enemy that seemed to evolve faster than they could innovate. Warriors who had trained their entire lives for combat found themselves questioning whether their skills mattered against foes who could regenerate from seemingly fatal wounds. In the privacy of her chambers, away from the prying eyes of her advisors and the weight of public expectation, the Queen often gazed upon the ancient artifacts of her people. Each relic told stories of past triumphs over adversity, of times when the Zorathians had faced extinction-level threats and emerged stronger. But this time felt different. This time, the enemy didn't play by any known rules of warfare or diplomacy. They consumed, they adapted, they advanced, without mercy or negotiation. The Queen's own personal guard had dwindled from 12 elite warriors to just 4, each bearing injuries that would have killed lesser beings. Her chief strategist, a venerable elder whose tactical genius had secured peace treaties with dozens of species, had recently suggested a course of action that shocked even his most cynical colleagues: strategic retreat and surrender negotiations. The very idea of capitulation went against every fiber of Zorathian culture, yet it had gained traction among the ruling council members. As she surveyed the holographic displays showing the latest battle formations and casualty projections, the Queen couldn't help but notice how similar these patterns were to those that had preceded the fall of their last major stronghold. The Vorlaks were employing the same tactics again: feint attacks on multiple fronts, drawing forces thin, then striking at the heart of their defenses with overwhelming force. Despite knowing this pattern, despite preparing countermeasures, her forces kept falling into the same trap. Her claws tapped rhythmically against the crystalline surface of the command console, a nervous habit she developed during these long nights of planning and strategizing. Every option she considered seemed to lead back to the same conclusion: unless something fundamentally changed in their approach, the Zorathian Empire would cease to exist within the next cycle. The thought weighed heavily on her thoracic segments, making even basic movement feel like carrying the weight of entire worlds. What made this crisis particularly devastating was how it challenged everything the Zorathians believed about their place in the universe. For millennia, they had positioned themselves as protectors of galactic peace, mediators between warring species, and pioneers of interstellar cooperation. Now, they found themselves fighting for survival against an enemy that showed no interest in dialogue, no capacity for empathy, and no respect for the delicate balance of power that had maintained relative peace in their sector of space. The Queen's antennae twitched as she received another wave of bad news through the psychic network that connected all Zorathians. Another fleet had been lost. Another colony world had fallen silent. Yet amidst this torrent of despair, something unusual caught her attention. A small human vessel that had somehow managed to penetrate deep into contested space and dock at one of their most secure facilities. The humans, those peculiar mammals from the blue-green planet, had shown remarkable resilience and creativity in their short time among the stars. Perhaps, she mused, there might be wisdom to gain from their perspective. Though the thought of seeking counsel from a species so young it still fought amongst itself on its home world seemed almost desperate. In the depths of the Zorathian flagship's docking bay, Lieutenant Marcus Kane adjusted the collar of his standard-issue Alliance uniform, feeling distinctly out of place among the towering insectoid warriors. His presence here was supposed to be a routine diplomatic mission, delivering updated trade protocols between Earth and the Zorathian Empire. But as he watched the alien queen enter the chamber, flanked by her remaining elite guards, he understood that fate had other plans for him. The air crackled with an intensity that went beyond mere ceremony, and the way the Zorathian warriors parted before their leader spoke volumes about the gravity of their situation. Marcus had always been drawn to the stars, not out of some romantic notion of exploration, but because he saw in humanity's reach for the cosmos a reflection of its greatest strengths and weaknesses. Growing up in the shadow of Earth's corporate wars, where megacorporations battled for resources and influence, he had learned that victory often came not from superior firepower but from understanding one's opponent better than they understood themselves. This philosophy had served him well during his rise through the ranks, particularly during the brutal conflicts in the Martian mining colonies, where conventional military tactics had failed repeatedly against insurgents who knew the underground tunnels better than any map could show. His reputation as a problem solver had earned him this diplomatic posting, though diplomatic hardly described his usual methods. During the Venusian uprising, when corporate mercenaries had taken control of vital terraforming stations, Marcus had infiltrated their ranks posing as a defector. He spent weeks learning their routines, their fears, their motivations, until he understood them better than they understood themselves. The resulting operation hadn't just neutralized the threat. It had exposed corruption reaching into Earth's highest political circles, leading to reforms that saved millions of lives. Standing there in the alien docking bay, surrounded by creatures that could crush him with a single blow of their powerful limbs, Marcus felt that familiar mix of adrenaline and clarity wash over him. The Zorathians weren't just fighting a war. They were facing extinction, and every movement of their queen's segmented body spoke of desperation masked by dignity. He recognized the signs immediately. The slight hesitation before issuing commands, the way her advisors leaned in too closely, their multifaceted eyes darting between their leader and the holographic displays of battlefield losses. The lieutenant's fingers brushed against the datapad containing his official documents, but his mind was already racing through possibilities. Humanity's history was written in blood and fire, marked by countless moments when victory seemed impossible until someone looked at the problem from a completely different angle. The Battle of Britain during World War II, where radar technology and civilian aircraft factories hidden in plain sight turned the tide against overwhelming odds. The Siege of Sarajevo, where civilians maintained radio broadcasts and cultural events even as shells rained down, preserving their spirit while undermining the morale of their attackers. These historical echoes resonated with what he saw in the Zorathian command center. Their technology was far beyond anything humanity had achieved, yet they approached warfare with a rigid adherence to established protocols that reminded him of Earth's old-world militaries before the lessons of guerrilla warfare had been fully absorbed. The Vorlak Horde's adaptive nature demanded a response that combined technological superiority with psychological warfare, something humanity had become disturbingly proficient at during its own conflicts. As the Queen approached, Marcus noted how her movements carried the weight of countless decisions, each one potentially dooming her people. He'd seen that same burden in the eyes of Earth's leaders during crises, though never quite so literally embodied as in this alien monarch whose very physiology seemed designed to carry the hopes and fears of billions. His own experiences in command situations, particularly during the Europa incident when he'd had to choose between saving a research team or maintaining operational security, gave him insight into the impossible choices she faced daily. The translator device hummed softly as he activated it, preparing to deliver his official greetings. But beneath the formal words he would speak, his mind worked furiously to connect disparate elements. The Zorathians' sophisticated psychic network, their hierarchical society, their pride in their technological achievements, and the Vorlak's apparent inability to comprehend individual initiative. These weren't just pieces of information. They were potential weapons, if only someone could see how to wield them properly. Marcus's fingers absently traced the scar running along his jawline, a reminder of the time he'd barely escaped a corporate assassin's blade during peace negotiations on Titan. That experience had taught him that sometimes survival depended less on physical strength and more on understanding the spaces between actions, the moments when opponents revealed their true intentions. As he watched the alien queen studying him with those compound eyes that seemed to see everything yet miss the crucial details, he realized that perhaps the salvation of this mighty empire might depend on someone who could operate in those spaces between their rigid protocols and the chaotic reality of warfare. The chamber fell silent as Marcus stepped forward, his boots clicking against the crystalline floor in a rhythm that seemed to echo through the vast space. The alien queen regarded him with an intensity that made his skin prickle, though he maintained his composure, years of military training keeping his stance firm and his expression neutral. Around them, the holographic displays continued their ghostly dance, showing scenes of destruction that needed no translation to understand. The lieutenant's eyes moved methodically across these images, noting patterns that seemed glaringly obvious to someone accustomed to analyzing asymmetric warfare. "Your Majesty," Marcus began, his voice steady despite the translator's slight delay, "I've reviewed your recent engagements." He gestured toward a particular sequence showing Vorlak forces retreating from what appeared to be a successful defense of a key outpost. "You're treating them like any other military force, anticipating logical responses to your strategies. But they're not playing by your rules. They're exploiting them." The Queen's antennae twitched slightly, a gesture he'd come to recognize as interest mixed with skepticism. Her guards shifted position, their chitinous armor clicking softly in the tense silence. Marcus pressed on, pointing to another display showing a Vorlak assault formation. "Look at their attack patterns. They're not just adapting to your weapon's frequencies, they're learning your decision-making processes. Every time you adjust your strategy, they're already several steps ahead, because they've anticipated how your command structure will respond." He moved closer to the central holo projector, ignoring the subtle warning hisses from the Queen's guards. "On Earth, we faced similar challenges during our urban conflicts. When conventional forces tried to apply traditional military doctrine against decentralized insurgent cells, we suffered catastrophic losses. It wasn't until we started thinking like our opponents, understanding their motivations and limitations, that we turned the tide." The lieutenant called up a series of diagrams from his datapad, projecting them alongside the Zorathian battle maps. "Your current approach is like trying to fight a wildfire with walls. The flames simply find new paths around your defenses. Instead, you need to create conditions that work against their natural tendencies." He highlighted specific instances where Vorlak forces had paused their advances, seemingly confused by unexpected variables in the battlefield environment. "Their hive-mind is both their greatest strength and their fatal flaw," Marcus explained, pacing slowly as he organized his thoughts. "It allows for perfect coordination but leaves no room for independent judgment. You're fighting them as if they were individual units capable of autonomous decision-making. What you need to do is introduce chaos into their system. Make them question their own instincts." The Queen's multifaceted eyes narrowed slightly, and Marcus recognized the subtle shift in her posture as engagement rather than dismissal. "Consider this," he continued, pulling up records of Earth's cyber warfare operations. "When we faced artificial intelligence systems during the Singularity Crisis, we didn't try to outcalculate them. We introduced paradoxical scenarios that forced their logic circuits to loop indefinitely. Your enemies are biological, but their collective consciousness operates on similar principles." He pointed to a series of engagements where Zorathian forces had successfully defended positions only to lose them hours later to surprise counterattacks. "You're winning battles but losing the war because you're playing directly into their evolutionary programming. They're designed to overwhelm through sheer numbers and adaptation. Every time you present them with a clear target and a straightforward defense, you're giving them exactly what their biology craves." Marcus activated a simulation on the holoprojector, demonstrating how small, seemingly random changes in defensive patterns could create cascading effects throughout the Vorlak command structure. "Instead of building stronger walls, create illusions of weakness. Make them doubt their sensory input. Introduce conflicting signals into their psychic network. Not enough to damage it, but sufficient to cause momentary confusion." The Queen's claws clicked against the command console as she processed this information, her advisors whispering urgently in their harmonic language. Marcus could see the calculations running behind her compound eyes, the weight of generations of military doctrine colliding with the possibility of radical change. "Your technology gives you the means to implement this strategy," he pressed, sensing her hesitation. "Your psychic network could broadcast false signals, create phantom fleets, project misleading battle scenarios. Make them fight shadows while you strike at their real vulnerabilities." He called up historical data from Earth's conflicts, showing how misinformation campaigns had turned the tide in seemingly hopeless situations. During the lunar insurrection, rebels expected us to defend key infrastructure directly. Instead, we created entire fake facilities, complete with automated defenses and false communications. While they wasted resources attacking empty targets, we dismantled their supply lines and isolated their strongholds. The chamber's atmosphere had shifted noticeably, the initial skepticism giving way to intense consideration. The Queen's guards had relaxed their aggressive stances, their attention focused entirely on the unfolding analysis. Marcus could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on him, but he pressed forward, driven by the conviction that he was seeing solutions they had missed through familiarity. "Your current tactics are like trying to drain an ocean with a spoon," he concluded, returning to the central display. "You need to redirect the flow, use their own momentum against them. Create situations where their instinctive responses lead them into traps of their own making." He highlighted several upcoming engagements, demonstrating how minor adjustments in deployment patterns could trigger chain reactions throughout the Vorlak command structure. The Queen extended one of her segmented limbs, touching the hollow projector's interface. The gesture silenced the chamber instantly, and Marcus felt a surge of hope as he watched her manipulate the battle simulations, testing different scenarios based on his suggestions. Her advisors crowded closer, their harmonic discussions rising in intensity as they explored the implications of this new approach. For the first time since his arrival, Marcus sensed a shift in the room's energy. From resignation to cautious optimism, from despair to the spark of possibility. The chamber transformed into a crucible of innovation as the Queen's advisors swarmed around Marcus, their harmonic language creating a symphony of questions and calculations. The lieutenant found himself at the center of a whirlwind of activity, his initial observations sparking a cascade of strategic possibilities that rippled through the Zorathian command structure. Technical specialists scurried between terminals, recalibrating their psychic network protocols to incorporate elements of deliberate misinformation. Tactical officers reworked deployment patterns, integrating Marcus's suggestions about creating controlled chaos into their existing frameworks. At the heart of this transformation stood the Queen herself, her iridescent exoskeleton glowing with renewed purpose as she orchestrated the integration of human strategic thinking with Zorathian technological prowess. She directed her engineers to modify their psychic communication arrays, not just to broadcast false signals but to weave complex layers of truth and deception that would challenge the Vorlak hive-mind's processing capabilities. The lieutenant watched with fascination as ancient Zorathian algorithms, designed for peaceful interspecies communication, were repurposed into sophisticated tools of psychological warfare. Marcus's presence became a catalyst for broader changes within the command structure. Younger officers, previously constrained by rigid protocols, found themselves encouraged to propose unconventional solutions. A junior tactician suggested using abandoned asteroid mining facilities as decoy bases, triggering memories of Earth's Trojan horse strategies in Marcus's mind. The idea evolved rapidly as others contributed refinements, eventually becoming a comprehensive plan to create entire networks of phantom installations throughout contested space sectors. The integration process revealed unexpected synergies between human and Zorathian approaches to warfare. Marcus discovered that the alien psychic network could achieve effects similar to Earth's quantum encryption systems, but on a scale that made his previous experiences seem primitive by comparison. Working with their scientists, he helped develop protocols for introducing calculated inconsistencies into their communication channels. Not enough to disrupt their own operations, but sufficient to sow doubt in the Vorlak collective consciousness. One of the most significant adaptations involved their defensive perimeter strategies. Traditional Zorathian doctrine emphasized concentric layers of protection, each more formidable than the last. Under Marcus's guidance, these static defenses transformed into dynamic, ever-shifting patterns that would appear to Vorlak sensors as either impenetrable fortresses or vulnerable weak points, depending on the desired psychological effect. The Queen's engineering corps worked tirelessly to implement these changes, their segmented bodies moving with renewed vigor as they modified centuries-old defense platforms. The human warrior's influence extended beyond tactical considerations. He introduced concepts of psychological operations that resonated deeply with Zorathian cultural values. Their society's emphasis on harmony and balance found new expression in strategies that sought to disrupt the Vorlak's internal equilibrium. Marcus worked with their cultural historians to identify aspects of Zorathian art and music that could be weaponized. Complex harmonic patterns that, when broadcast through their psychic network, would create dissonance in the Vorlak hive-mind's processing centers. Perhaps most significantly, Marcus's presence challenged the fundamental assumptions underlying Zorathian military doctrine. Their traditional approach had always emphasized direct confrontation and overwhelming force, reflecting their species' evolutionary path from apex predators to galactic power. The humans' insistence on indirect methods and psychological manipulation required a profound shift in thinking that rippled through every level of their command structure. Veterans who had spent lifetimes perfecting conventional tactics found themselves learning new skills, while younger warriors embraced the changes with enthusiasm born of desperation. The Queen herself underwent a transformation, her leadership style evolving to accommodate the fluid nature of their new strategy. Where once she had relied on rigid chains of command and precise execution of pre-planned maneuvers, she now encouraged improvisation and local initiative. Marcus observed with satisfaction how she delegated authority to field commanders, trusting them to interpret broad strategic guidelines rather than follow detailed orders. This decentralization of command mirrored Earth's most successful resistance movements, where flexibility and adaptability had often proved more valuable than superior numbers or technology. As days stretched into weeks, the war chamber became a laboratory of innovation. Teams of Zorathian technicians and human advisors worked side by side, combining their respective strengths to create hybrid solutions that neither species could have developed alone. Marcus found himself mentoring young Zorathian officers in the art of misdirection while learning from their experts about manipulating gravitational fields to create temporary spatial anomalies, techniques that added new dimensions to his understanding of warfare. The changes manifested physically as well. Ship designs evolved to incorporate elements of deception and camouflage, their sleek forms modified to create optical illusions that would confuse Vorlak targeting systems. Weapons platforms were reconfigured to fire in patterns that would trigger specific responses from their enemies' adaptive shielding, creating opportunities for secondary strikes that exploited the resulting vulnerabilities. Even the uniforms of Zorathian warriors changed, incorporating materials that could alter their appearance and heat signatures to support larger deception operations. Through it all, Marcus maintained his role as both teacher and student. He shared Earth's hard-won lessons about the importance of maintaining civilian morale during prolonged conflicts, helping the Queen develop programs to keep her people's spirits high even as they implemented drastic changes to their military strategies. In return, he absorbed knowledge about Zorathian social structures and psychological makeup that enhanced his ability to craft effective strategies against their common enemy. The integration of human strategic thinking reached its peak during a series of simulated engagements conducted in the ship's vast virtual reality chambers. Marcus watched with pride as Zorathian commanders executed maneuvers that would have been unthinkable months earlier. Feigned retreats that drew Vorlak forces into carefully prepared killing zones, coordinated misinformation campaigns that caused enemy units to attack their own positions, and elaborate deceptions that left their opponents paralyzed by uncertainty. Each successful simulation strengthened the resolve of those involved and refined their understanding of how to apply these new tactics in real-world scenarios. The Queen's transformation from skeptic to advocate became complete during these exercises. She demonstrated an intuitive grasp of the psychological aspects of warfare that rivaled Marcus's own expertise, combining his insights with Zorathian technological capabilities to create strategies of unprecedented sophistication. Her former rigidity gave way to a flexible, adaptive leadership style that inspired her people to embrace change rather than fear it. The chamber that had once echoed with despair now buzzed with creative energy, as warriors and scientists alike contributed to the development of what they began calling the harmony strategy, a nod to their cultural heritage that perfectly captured the essence of their new approach. The first test of their integrated strategy came during the defense of Sector 42 Gamma, a critical nexus point in the Zorathian communication network. Marcus stood beside the Queen in the flagship's command center, watching as their carefully orchestrated deception unfolded across multiple star systems. The Vorlak forces, responding to deliberately leaked intelligence about a supposedly vulnerable supply convoy, launched a massive assault on what appeared to be a lightly defended trade route. What they encountered instead was a meticulously constructed illusion, hundreds of drone ships projecting false sensor readings while actual Zorathian forces remained hidden in carefully calculated ambush positions. As the battle progressed, Marcus witnessed the culmination of weeks of preparation. The Vorlak hive-mind, confronted with conflicting signals from the modified psychic network, began showing signs of processing overload. Their usually perfect coordination faltered as individual units received contradictory orders, some pushing forward aggressively while others hesitated, creating gaps in their formations that Zorathian strike teams exploited with surgical precision. The Queen's eyes glowed with satisfaction as she monitored the cascading effects of their strategy, each successful maneuver validating the human warrior's insights. Throughout the engagement, Marcus maintained constant communication with field commanders, adjusting tactics in real time as new opportunities presented themselves. The flexibility built into their new approach allowed for rapid adaptation, with units able to modify their roles based on emerging battlefield conditions rather than sticking to rigid pre-planned operations. This fluidity proved crucial when a Vorlak reserve fleet unexpectedly entered the sector, forcing immediate re-evaluation of deployment priorities. The humans' experience with dynamic command structures enabled seamless integration of these changes, preventing what could have been a disastrous breakdown in coordination. The Queen's presence in the command center took on new significance as she demonstrated mastery of the hybrid strategy. Her decisions reflected a perfect synthesis of Zorathian tactical tradition and human psychological warfare principles, each order carrying the weight of both species' accumulated wisdom. When Vorlak forces attempted to adapt to the deception, she countered with layered misinformation that exploited their growing uncertainty. False retreats became genuine advances, phantom fleets materialized into real threats, and carefully timed broadcasts of harmonic interference disrupted their command coherence. Victories began accumulating at an accelerating pace as the new strategy proved its worth across multiple theaters of operation. In the Arcturus system, a coordinated campaign of misinformation convinced Vorlak commanders to divert significant resources to defend against a non-existent invasion force, allowing Zorathian special operations teams to reclaim 3 key starbases without firing a shot. The Queen personally oversaw the operation, her understanding of human strategic thinking enabling her to anticipate and exploit every opportunity created by the deception. Marcus's role evolved from primary strategist to mentor and coordinator as more Zorathian commanders mastered the new approach. He established a network of advisory teams, pairing experienced human tacticians with Zorathian officers to ensure consistent application of the hybrid strategy across all levels of command. These teams became incubators of innovation, constantly refining and expanding upon the original concepts. The lieutenant took particular satisfaction in watching young Zorathian warriors develop their own variations on human deception tactics, adapting them to fit their species' unique capabilities and cultural context. The psychological impact of their success spread beyond military operations. Zorathian civilians, who had grown accustomed to hearing only bad news, began receiving reports of victories that seemed almost miraculous in their effectiveness. Morale soared as people witnessed their traditional strengths, technological superiority and psychic network capabilities, being used in ways that finally turned the tide against the seemingly unstoppable Vorlak Horde. The Queen capitalized on the shift, initiating a series of public addresses that emphasized the fusion of old and new approaches, presenting their strategic evolution as a natural extension of Zorathian ingenuity rather than a desperate departure from tradition. Field reports from various sectors painted a picture of an enemy growing increasingly erratic in its behavior. Vorlak forces, accustomed to their opponents' predictable responses, found themselves trapped in cycles of indecision as their hive-mind struggled to process the constant stream of misleading information. Entire squadrons would suddenly change course mid-attack, their collective consciousness unable to reconcile conflicting sensor data with established tactical doctrines. Marcus studied these patterns with growing confidence, recognizing the signs of an adversary beginning to doubt its own perceptions. Exactly the outcome he had predicted during those first tense meetings in the war chamber. The integration of human strategic principles reached its most sophisticated expression in the development of what became known as harmonic warfare. Zorathian scientists, working closely with human advisors, created complex algorithmic patterns that, when broadcast through their psychic network, could induce temporary processing errors in the Vorlak hive mind. These harmonic sequences, drawing equally from Zorathian musical theory and human psychological operations research, proved devastatingly effective when synchronized with military operations. The Queen herself participated in the design of these patterns, her artistic sensibilities combining with Marcus's tactical expertise to create weapons that were as much works of art as instruments of war. As successes mounted, Marcus observed a fundamental shift in the Zorathian military culture. Officers who had initially resisted the new approach now competed to demonstrate their mastery of hybrid tactics. Training programs incorporated elements of human strategic thinking alongside traditional Zorathian doctrines, producing a generation of warriors uniquely equipped to face the challenges of modern interstellar conflict. The Queen's leadership style, once characterized by rigid adherence to protocol, evolved into a model of adaptive command that balanced centralized vision with decentralized execution, a structure that Marcus recognized as remarkably similar to Earth's most effective military organizations. The practical applications of their strategy expanded beyond direct combat operations. Economic warfare became a crucial component of their overall campaign, with Zorathian agents using human-developed techniques of market manipulation to destabilize Vorlak-controlled territories. Marcus worked closely with Zorathian financial experts to create artificial shortages of critical resources, timing these disruptions to coincide with military operations. The results were devastating, as Vorlak forces found themselves unable to maintain their usual tempo of advance when supply lines faltered due to seemingly random economic fluctuations. Perhaps most significantly, the success of their hybrid strategy began influencing Zorathian approaches to other challenges beyond the immediate conflict. Scientific research teams adopted similar principles of controlled chaos in their experiments, leading to breakthroughs in fields ranging from quantum physics to biotechnology. Social planners incorporated elements of strategic misdirection into their programs for managing civilian populations during wartime, creating networks of support and information that operated on multiple levels of truth and deception. The Queen's Court itself transformed into a model of adaptive governance, with policies and initiatives flowing through channels of communication that mirrored their military deception networks. Through it all, Marcus maintained his position as both participant and observer, documenting the evolution of this unprecedented collaboration between species. He recognized that what they were creating transcended mere military alliance. It represented a fundamental fusion of two distinct approaches to problem-solving, each enhancing and elevating the other to create something greater than the sum of its parts. The war chamber, once a monument to despair, had become a crucible of innovation where ideas flowed freely between human and Zorathian minds, forging new paths to victory that neither species could have imagined alone. The transformation of the Zorathian war effort reached its zenith during the climactic battle for the Kalian Expanse, a strategically vital region that had become the focal point of the entire conflict. Marcus stood beside the Queen in the flagship's observation deck, watching as their carefully orchestrated plan unfolded across light years of contested space. The Vorlak forces, responding to weeks of meticulously crafted misinformation, had committed their entire reserve fleet to what appeared to be a decisive assault on the Zorathian homeworld. Instead, they found themselves facing an intricate web of illusions and real threats that defied their ability to distinguish truth from deception. Through the panoramic viewport, Marcus observed the spectacular display of coordinated chaos. Phantom fleets materialized and vanished across the expanse, their projected mass readings fluctuating wildly as Zorathian technicians manipulated gravitational fields to enhance the illusion. Real warships danced through the spectral ballet, their movements guided by the hybrid strategy that had become second nature to their commanders. The Vorlak hive-mind, overwhelmed by the flood of conflicting information, began showing signs of systemic breakdown as individual units received contradictory orders and sensor readings. The Queen's presence radiated calm authority as she directed the operation, her decisions reflecting a perfect synthesis of Zorathian tactical precision and human psychological insight. When Vorlak command ships attempted to establish stable communication links between their scattered forces, she ordered targeted harmonic broadcasts that created interference patterns specifically designed to amplify their confusion. Marcus watched with professional satisfaction as enemy formations dissolved into chaos, their perfect coordination unraveling under the weight of calculated uncertainty. Across the expanse, Zorathian strike teams executed maneuvers that would have been impossible under traditional doctrine. Small, highly mobile units penetrated deep into Vorlak territory, their movements guided by real-time analysis of enemy responses to the ongoing deception. The lieutenant coordinated these operations from the flagship, his human intuition complementing the Zorathian commander's technical expertise to create opportunities that neither species could have identified alone. Each successful penetration of Vorlak defenses provided valuable intelligence while simultaneously sowing further doubt in their enemy's collective consciousness. The battle's turning point came when a Vorlak command cluster, unable to resolve the conflicting signals bombarding their psychic network, initiated an unprecedented full retreat. Marcus recognized the moment's significance immediately. The hive-mind, which had always operated with machine-like efficiency, was experiencing something akin to panic. The Queen seized this opportunity with characteristic decisiveness, ordering a complex series of feints and real attacks that prevented the Vorlak forces from establishing coherent withdrawal routes. As the engagement progressed, Marcus documented numerous instances where the hybrid strategy demonstrated its full potential. In one sector, Zorathian forces created the illusion of a massive fleet buildup, causing Vorlak reserves to converge on an empty system while actual attack groups struck at undefended supply lines. In another region, harmonic warfare sequences synchronized with gravitational manipulations produced effects that temporarily disrupted Vorlak's psychic cohesion, allowing Zorathian boarding parties to capture intact enemy vessels for the first time in the war's history. The psychological impact of these victories rippled through both sides of the conflict. Zorathian forces, who had once doubted their ability to prevail against the seemingly unstoppable Vorlak Horde, now fought with renewed confidence and creativity. Young officers proposed increasingly sophisticated variations on the core strategy, each new idea building upon the foundation laid during those early days in the war chamber. The Queen encouraged this innovation, creating channels for rapid dissemination of successful tactics across all theaters of operation. Marcus observed with particular interest how the hybrid approach affected decision-making at all levels of command. Field officers demonstrated remarkable adaptability, modifying their roles and objectives in real time based on emerging opportunities created by the enemy's growing confusion. This flexibility, once foreign to Zorathian military culture, had become their greatest strength, allowing them to exploit every advantage while maintaining operational security. The lieutenant took pride in watching his human concepts of decentralized command integrate seamlessly with Zorathian organizational principles, creating a command structure that was both efficient and responsive. The Vorlak response to their deteriorating situation provided valuable insights into the effectiveness of the hybrid strategy. Their attempts to adapt to the constant stream of misinformation only deepened their confusion, as each adjustment triggered new layers of deception. Marcus studied these patterns with scientific detachment, noting how their hive-mind's evolutionary programming, which had once given them such advantage, now worked against them when faced with systematic uncertainty. The Queen's tactical decisions, informed by both species' perspectives, consistently stayed several steps ahead of their enemies' attempts to regain initiative. Beyond the immediate battlefield, the strategy's influence manifested in unexpected ways. Zorathian scientists, inspired by the success of harmonic warfare, began applying similar principles to other fields of research. Breakthroughs in quantum communication and gravitational manipulation accelerated as researchers embraced the concept of controlled chaos as a tool for discovery. The Queen herself participated in these developments, her artistic sensibilities finding new expression in technological innovation that complemented their military efforts. Civilian morale, which had reached dangerously low levels during the war's darkest days, soared as news of victory after victory reached the home front. The Queen's public addresses, carefully crafted to emphasize both traditional Zorathian values and the innovative approaches that had turned the tide, helped transform what had been seen as desperate measures into celebrated examples of cultural evolution. Marcus observed how this narrative shift strengthened social cohesion, creating a feedback loop where military success reinforced civilian support, which in turn enabled more ambitious strategic initiatives. The hybrid strategy's most profound impact, however, lay in its demonstration of what could be achieved through genuine interspecies collaboration. In the war chamber, human and Zorathian minds worked together with unprecedented synergy, each contributing unique perspectives that enhanced the other's capabilities. Marcus found himself participating in discussions that ranged from tactical considerations to philosophical debates about the nature of warfare itself, all within the context of developing increasingly sophisticated applications of their shared approach. As the battle for the Kalian expanse continued to unfold, Marcus recognized that they had created something truly revolutionary. Not just a new way of fighting, but a fundamentally different approach to problem-solving that transcended cultural and biological differences. The war chamber, once a symbol of impending defeat, had become a crucible where two distinct civilizations forged a new path forward, their combined wisdom creating possibilities that neither could have imagined alone. Through the panoramic viewport, he watched as Zorathian forces, guided by principles that blended human ingenuity with alien technological mastery, systematically dismantled what had seemed an unbeatable enemy, each victory building upon the last in a cascade of strategic success that showed no signs of slowing. The war chamber pulsed with an electric tension as Marcus and the Queen reviewed the latest intelligence reports. The Vorlak Hive Mother, sensing the shift in momentum, had begun implementing drastic measures to stabilize her fracturing command structure. Across the contested sectors, Zorathian forces encountered new Vorlak units exhibiting unprecedented autonomy, a dangerous deviation from their traditional hive-mind coordination. Marcus's fingers traced patterns on the holo display, connecting these developments to similar moments in Earth's history when authoritarian regimes had attempted to decentralize power in response to existential threats. The Queen's advisors buzzed with concern as they analyzed data showing increased neural activity in captured Vorlak specimens. Their hive mind, once a monolithic entity, appeared to be fragmenting into semi-independent subnetworks. This adaptation, while potentially stabilizing their command structure, introduced vulnerabilities that Marcus recognized from his studies of corporate warfare on Earth. They're creating firewalls within their consciousness, he explained, pointing to schematic representations of Vorlak neural patterns. Each subnetwork can operate independently, but the connections between them are weaker. If we can identify and target these junction points. His voice trailed off as the implications sank in. The Queen's segmented limbs moved swiftly across the command console, calling up additional data streams. Her antennae vibrated with controlled excitement as she processed the new information through the lens of their hybrid strategy. Our harmonic warfare sequences could be modified to resonate specifically with these connection points, she responded, her translator conveying both the technical details and the underlying urgency. But we must proceed carefully. Disrupting their new structure too quickly could trigger a complete collapse of their command hierarchy. Marcus nodded, recalling similar situations where sudden power vacuums had created unpredictable consequences. We need to create controlled instability, he suggested, activating a simulation program. Gradually increase the pressure on their subnetworks while maintaining the illusion of overwhelming force elsewhere. Make them believe they can stabilize their situation by consolidating power, when in reality we're guiding them toward. His explanation was interrupted by an urgent alert from the sensor array. The holo-displays flickered as new data flooded the system. A massive Vorlak fleet had emerged from subspace at the edge of the Darnath system, their movements displaying characteristics that matched none of the established patterns. The Queen's Guard shifted position, their chitinous armor clicking softly in response to the heightened tension. Marcus studied the readings with growing concern. The Vorlak ships were arranging themselves in formations that suggested both centralized command and distributed initiative, a hybrid approach that combined their traditional strengths with the new autonomy they had developed. This changes everything, Marcus muttered, his eyes scanning the tactical readouts. They're attempting to merge their old and new command structures in real time. If they succeed. He didn't need to finish the thought. The Queen's multifaceted eyes reflected his understanding of the situation's gravity. Their previous successes had been built on exploiting the Vorlak's rigid adherence to hive-mind coordination. This new development threatened to negate many of their advantages. The war chamber's atmosphere shifted as officers and analysts converged on the central display. The Queen raised her primary limbs, silencing the rising chorus of speculation. We must adapt faster than they can evolve, she declared, her voice carrying both command and calculation. Lieutenant Kane, your species has faced similar challenges when dealing with corporate entities that attempted to decentralize while maintaining control. What lessons can we apply here? Marcus activated a series of historical overlays, comparing the Vorlak's current evolution to Earth's corporate restructuring during the resource wars. The key is to target their transition points, he explained, highlighting critical junctures in the Vorlak formation patterns. When organizations attempt to shift from centralized to distributed control, they're most vulnerable during the actual transfer of authority. As Marcus and the Queen devised a plan to exploit the Vorlak's transitional vulnerabilities, their forces launched a synchronized assault on the Darnath system. Harmonic warfare sequences were fine-tuned to destabilize the fragile connections between Vorlak subnetworks, causing their hybrid command structure to fracture under the strain. The Queen's fleet executed precise maneuvers, isolating key Vorlak units and forcing them into chaotic retreats. Realizing their enemy's adaptation was incomplete, Marcus proposed a final gambit, broadcasting false signals that mimicked a total collapse of Zorathian defenses, luring the Vorlak hive mother into overextending her forces. In a climactic engagement, the Vorlak Horde fell into the trap, their fragmented command structure unable to respond cohesively. With their leadership in disarray, the Zorathians delivered a decisive blow, shattering the Vorlak fleet and crippling their ability to wage war. The hive mother, cornered and desperate, attempted one last surge but was overwhelmed by coordinated Zorathian counterattacks. As the dust settled, the Queen addressed her people, crediting their victory to unity, innovation, and the unexpected alliance with humanity. Marcus stood beside her, a symbol of interspecies collaboration, as hope replaced despair across the galaxy. Together, they vowed to rebuild not just their worlds, but a new era of cooperation among all sentient beings, a testament to the power of shared wisdom in the face of impossible odds.